afternoon, and it's good to be here together. Today we gather this afternoon to remember the life of Nancy Cameron, and we come to celebrate her life and to celebrate her family, those that she touched, her loved ones, her friends, and we come together to comfort one another in the midst of death and in the midst of grief, and also to choose to hope that God is among us, and that ultimately we are in God's hands, and that ultimately the future is God's. I'm realizing that our microphone is not on, and so I'm going to have to go up to the balcony at some point and turn it on. I'm not sure when that's going to happen, but I'm going to get up there so that the speakers here, maybe Kathy will go up for me. Thank you, Kathy. I appreciate that. So with that, I think we will open up with a prayer. And then we'll move into our songs and into our service this afternoon. Let's pray. Loving God, we give you thanks for the life of Nancy, our sister Nancy, and for getting to know her and for getting to love her. We give you thanks for our family and for our friends. We give you thanks for bringing us together again. For this moment, let us reflect upon our lives. Let us be ever thankful for the times we are able to gather in fun and laughter. Let us reminisce with joy those happy times together. Thank you for this time to remember Nancy. She's not forgotten. We thank you for your presence that is with us now. Give our hearts peace and rest. And give us hope. And it's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Together we will join in singing. Our song is I Come to the Garden Alone, and the words are printed on your insert. I come to the garden alone.
I
At this point in our service, we're going to have an opportunity for a group of people to come up here and share some stories or some thoughts about Nancy and her life. And so I believe, is it Roger who's going to first speak?
All right, need a microphone. I think I'm here to welcome everybody. Thank you for coming today with us to celebrate Mom's life. And my sisters and nieces will be telling you about all the wonderful things that she did, so I won't go into that. But I know one thing for sure. The Mom now is in heaven with Dad, in the Poet Club, and Lydia, and all her friends. And they're looking down, and they're seeing 3 kids, 5 grandkids, and 6 great-grandchildren. They're holding hands, and they're happy. Thank you.
I'm Nancy's granddaughter, Megan. I wanted to spend a few moments today and share a couple of my favorite memories of my grandma. As you all know, my grandma loved to travel and was fortunate enough to go all over the world with friends. She also took her grandchildren, or she called us the Fab Five, on many adventures as well. I'd like to talk about a couple of our family trips today. Our trips to Tahoe, staying at the LaBrinkies cabin, were unforgettable. All of our kids and grandkids would try to attend. There were no TVs, and back then no cell phones or iPads, and so we'd spend our entire time outdoors, going to the beach, playing mini golf, getting ice cream, playing card games and board games, and my grandma was there for it all. My grandma was always happy to sit and play the card game 2031, and she usually beat us. She was an early riser, and we would be the first one up every morning, sitting on the front deck, reading a book or making us apple skeevers. And she knew just how each grandkid liked their apple skeevers cooked. Mine were well done with sugar. We did the same trip for many years, a week in the summer at the LaBrinkies cabin. This annual trip helped establish my love for Lake Tahoe. My grandparents also took us all to Washington, D.C. the summer of 1995. We took Washington, D.C. by storm, wearing matching t-shirts and getting up each day before sunrise, even though we were on West Coast time. My grandma wanted to make sure we got the full experience and we were knowledgeable about what we were seeing and experiencing. And so she had us each write a report on a specific memorial or monument and present it before dawn to the group before we visited the respective place that day. She made sure our days were jam-packed, and we literally hit every museum, monument, the White House, Mount Vernon, Colonial Williamsburg, and so much more. Looking back on this trip, I'm so grateful. It was my first trip across the country. I was able to see so much in a week's time, and everything was planned out perfectly. This trip exemplified my grandma's thoughtful and generous nature. She would do anything for our kids and grandkids, and would go to great lengths to do so. I can't wait to relive the trip one day and go visit my cousin Luke, who was in law school in Washington, D.C. Years passed, and while it became harder for all of us to travel together, my grandma continued to be a loving and supportive grandparent and was always there to attend my sporting events, my college graduation, and continued to host Thanksgiving and Christmas Eve. Over the years, she started to forget things, which I always thought of as not out of the ordinary for an aging person. But over time, it started to be more than that. She would sit quietly at parties and take it all in and rely on my grandpa to fill in the blanks for her. She loved my grandpa very deeply, and we all saw the toll his passing took on her. The year following his passing, in 2016, my daughter Cameron was born. Every time I saw my grandma after that, I would introduce her to Cameron and say, "Grandma, this is your great-granddaughter Cameron. She's named after you." And she would say, "Isn't that the greatest thing?" every time. Even if she got more ill, she always had a sense of gentleness and kindness about her, and even at the very end was always so happy to see Cameron. In closing, I'd like to emphasize the profound love my grandma had for her children and grandchildren, and likewise us in return. The happy memories will live on forever. Thank you for instilling in me the importance of family, and for giving me my mom, who I'm counting on to continue your legacy. Well, thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Kelly O'Keefe Bassett, and I'm the oldest of what Grandma affectionately referred to us as the Fab Five. One of my fondest memories was in the mid-'80s when my grandparents hosted a Danish choir boy named Danny, my first crush. I followed that boy all over Petaluma. When their time in Petaluma was done, I was heartbroken. Well, being that it was the summer and they had their first motorhome, my grandparents packed us up and we followed Danny Denmark to San Juan Capistrano with many fun stops along the way. It being Christmas time, I just want to say that the best Santa we ever had was the Christmas of '94, when each of our Skillman Lane stockings was stuffed with an invitation letter and a point of interest about Washington, D.C. It took us all a moment, but we realized that Santa had just given us a week-long trip to D.C. and some homework. The trip was a trip of a lifetime, and all of us Camerons were able to join in. Grandma, you'll be dearly missed, but I know you're home now, reuniting with Poppy, holding hands with your head on his shoulder, or perhaps in the kitchen baking some of your legendary cookies. I know that I'll think about you all the time, but especially when I see a cookie. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Gail, Nancy's youngest daughter. I've spoken at 2 memorial services before this one. First was my Grandpa Ivan's service, where Mom had asked me to read her words for her. The second was my dad Jack's service, when I used the words Mom had recorded in her biography of him. Mom has created several family histories which have been comforting to us, as ironically, she could no longer remember the details of many things. After Dad's death, we found an autobiography Mom had written and never showed us. I will now share several of her stories. This passage is in her own words. It was decided that Mom would go to Hillside Hospital on Kentucky Street in Petaluma for my birth. It was there that I, Nancy Alice Iverson, was born on November 22nd, 1929. The birth certificate states only that I was born alive at 11:30 a.m. Well, thank goodness. It was this quiet sense of humor that Mom displayed throughout her lifetime that endeared her to so many. The fact that she did not share this autobiography with us speaks of her humility. She was always content to work in the background of events, and thereby ensuring their success with her hard work and her organization. Mom writes very openly about a childhood that was not always easy. Her mother, Asta, became very ill before Mom was 6 months old, and it did affect the family in a huge way. Fortunately, both sets of grandparents and many aunts and uncles were in and around Petaluma to help her and her sister Lily during these years. Mom did love growing up on the chicken ranch on Skillman Lane. She and Lily were expected to work hard and do chores at an early age, but she also writes of the neighborhood kids coming to their house to play. Her father, Ivan, would join in when he could, and Mom loved that. There were mostly boys her age in her neighborhood, so she especially loved it when her cousins visited. Vernon, Dorothy, and Clarence Christensen, Jack and Mary Hansen, and Inga Toft. She and Dorothy were baptized together here at Elam, and Dot remained a lifelong friend. Mom shared a story where she wanted to raise baby chickens when she was very young, but she could not understand not to hold them so tightly that she may smother them. Her dad could not afford to lose any chickens, so he would not let her have any of his. In defiance, she planted feathers in the ground, watering them faithfully, hoping to grow baby chickens of her own. Mom, it seems, was always an early to bed, early to rise type of person. She writes of always being a sleepyhead at family gatherings. She also wrote of waking up before Lily and sneaking into their closet to read a book so as not to wake her sister. I can personally attest to Mom's early risings, as during her cookie-making years, I could be awoken as early as 5 a.m. hearing her in the kitchen. The upside to waking up that early was that our home would always smell delicious. Mom also instilled the love of reading in her children. Roger received the Hardy Boy books, and Joan and I were given the entire set of Nancy Drew mystery stories to read, as well as classics and historical volumes. I still take time every day to read for pleasure, and am happy to have passed on this love of reading to both of my children. Thank you, Mom. Mom met Dad in high school, and the two of them, along with Walt Miller and Lily, and Doc Christensen and Bob McKinnon, would go out on group dates and outings. She writes that the 6 of them even crowded into one car in order to all go to the senior prom together. Uncle Duke and Aunt Bess Iverson would often chaperone these 6 at stays at the cabin on Russian River. Right after high school, Mom was able to get a job at Poultry Producers with the help of our neighbor, Ray Trenna. Ray had witnessed Mom and Lily working hard at the chicken ranch every day, and he offered Mom a tryout during Easter break. He liked what he saw and offered her a full-time job after high school graduation. She felt very lucky. It was there that Mom worked with Mary Hall, soon to be Mary LaFranchi. They spent their lunch hours together and eventually planned their weddings together. Mom wrote lovingly of her aunts and uncles, but her Aunt Betty Dunaway was very special to her. In her autobiography, Mom describes her like this: our lovely, tender Betty, Mom's youngest sister, who could draw beautiful pictures. She was a picture of perfection to be admired. She also took time to help her young nieces, curling our hair, advising us how to dress, and just playing with us. She was a perfect big sister. Aunt Betty and Uncle Jack would also take Mom and Dad and Aunt Will and Uncle Walt on chaperone trips to the river and snow, which Mom described as great fun. Mom was most appreciative of Aunt Betty when she was getting married. Mom wrote that she felt like Betty and Jack had taken her and Dad under their wings. Whether Mom needed advice or just wanted to stop by, Mom and Dad would be welcomed at the Dunaways. They even took Mom and Dad to San Francisco to buy Mom her going-away attire for after the wedding. Mom learned early in her marriage that any one of the huge Cameron clan could and would drop by, sometimes without notice. Mom was a wonderful hostess, and while family members would be visiting in the living room, she would disappear into the kitchen. Soon she would reappear with some sort of dessert and coffee. She was magical. Mom shared in her story that she really did not know a lot about taking care of babies. When she first had Roger, she relied heavily on Dr. Spock and her girlfriends in the poker club. In turn, Mom helped me out so much when Luke was born. She and Dad arrived at our doorstep in Oregon the day we were able to come home from the hospital. Dad went back to California after the weekend, and Mom stayed with us another month to help me get my health back and to not hurt Luke, according to Dad. This period was the longest they had been separated since dating, and it was a gift given to us without question or second thoughts. I can still remember when Mom and Dad reunited after this separation. Mike and I followed them through the airport, pushing Luke in a stroller and watching as they walked hand in hand, chatting away with smiles on their faces. Mom's kitchen and calendar were the hub for running our lives while we were growing up. One sweet thing she always did when writing a note to any of us was she would sign it love and kisses. Eventually, if she was in a hurry, she shortened it to just L and K. This leads me to the love shared between my mother and father. Dad was the outgoing one, and Mom was the glue that held us all together. She worked hard at his side and put family before everything. We never ate dinner at the same time of night. Instead, we checked the calendar Our dinners were anytime between 4 and 7, when Dad would have an hour's break from work or when he got home from work. We would be gathered around the table as a family. It didn't always work out once we became teenagers and our schedules got busier. Each dinner ended with us saying, "Tak for me," and Mom would reply, "Welcome." Becky shared a story with me from just a few years ago, right as Dad got sick. We were all down at Greg's house, probably for a party for Dane. Becky was sitting between Barb and her grandma, who was holding her hand. Suddenly, Mom leaned over to Becky and asked, "Where's Jack?" Becky smiled, as she could see him over on a bench with his head back asleep. She pointed him out to her grandma, who looked back at her and smiled, saying she was going to go wake him up. Becky watched, wondering what Grandma would do to wake him up. Mom took Dad's face in both of her hands and gave him a kiss. Dad woke up, smiled, and kissed her back. He scooted over to give her room on the bench, where they held hands and both fell asleep. Joan and I have been pretty busy these past few years, doing what we could to make Mom's life as pleasant for her as possible. Mom remembered Dad's passing for what seemed just like a few weeks. Then that changed to wondering where he was and being shocked to find out he was gone, to sometimes not remembering him as her husband, although she remembered her children most of the time. We came to cherish the written histories of family and the scrapbooks Mom had made of their trips, as we could read and share them with her. Often she was sure she could not have written these histories, and she had never gone on those trips, but we would continue to read them to her and let her know that indeed these were her stories. My co-workers would hear me arrange my days off from work around visits with Mom. If they commented on it, I would say, "But my sister comes down at least twice a week from Hidden Valley to spend time with Mom, so really, this is nothing." Sometimes I would hear the comment that we are typical of the sandwich generation, taking care of our parents and our children. Again, I would gently correct them by letting them know that Joan and my husbands and children were so supportive, willing to let us arrange our lives around our Mom's needs, and not complaining, but only wanting to be sure that we did not stop taking care of ourselves. So for that, thank you, Spike and Mike, Kelly and Rick and Luke and Haley.
You're welcome.
Jack. What did I say? You do that all the time. Jack. And Megan and Mike and Cameron and Steve and Becky and Luke and Kyle. We relied on you, on all of you, to keep our spirits up and our hopes up during this difficult passage. So thank you so much. On a personal note, when I called Luke back in Washington, D.C. to let him know his grandma had passed away, he told me that his wife Kyle had been having contractions during the previous night, but that they had stopped. I told him to talk to his little baby girl and let her know that this day would be a good one to be born. So as Joan and Spike and Mike and I were doing what needed to be done for Mom on her last day on this earth, we were also anxiously awaiting news from Luke. At 11 minutes to midnight, Washington, D.C. time, Pierce Jolie was born, my first grandchild and Mom's 6th great-grandchild. As Joni said when we got the news, she thought Mom and Dad were holding hands, looking down from heaven with smiles on their faces. Mom had learned at an early age to care for family. She wrote of when her mom would have seizures during the night, she would get over her fear and go in and help her dad take care of her mom. For as long as I can remember, while Mom was still well enough to be making cookies, she and Dad always made a point to visit sick friends and relatives, bringing cheer with a plate of cookies and conversation. After Mom's fall, there really was no more conversation with her, just a continual loop of reading to her and singing or praying with her. She would end her prayers with, "God bless Mother, Father, Sister, and me, and all the good people in the world." Mom, you were one of the great people in the world. Thank you for giving us so much.
Hello, I'm Joan O'Keefe, Jack and Nancy's middle child. Let me start by saying thank you for all being here to remember our mom. Memories, so many good ones, so many happy times. It's good to reflect on those because since Dad died 2.5 years ago, things haven't been so good. Let's start with the happy times. Mom and Dad were married here in this church, August 29, 1949. It was a wonderful day, and together they celebrated 66 years of marriage. They were able to